There's a raging debate in the pro-life community over this question. Should we use gruesome pictures of aborted babies in making the case for life?
Ephesians 5, don't cover evil deeds, expose them. But you look at social reform movements from the 19th and 20th centuries, and every single one of them used disturbing imagery to convey truths that couldn't be conveyed with words alone. And abortion is no different. Nobody you know in your churches would go to a lecture on the Vietnam War and be shocked to see images of naked children running from a village that's just been napalmed. That's expected. It's only on the abortion issue people say, hands off, you can't show the pictures. And when we're dealing with a culture that thinks right and wrong are preference issues, like choosing chocolate ice cream over vanilla, if you aren't showing images to restore a moral equilibrium, at least awaken a little bit their sense of moral intuition, I think you're fighting a huge uphill battle. But when we show those pictures, we need to do it with the grace and with pointing people to Jesus, who's the solution to their post-abortion guilt. There's a classic example here from the civil rights era. In 1955, an African-American boy by the name of Emmett Till Jr. journeyed from Chicago, where he was living, to his cousin's home in Money, Mississippi. And that 14-year-old boy got off the train in Money, Mississippi in 1955 and began to brag to his cousin about his two white girlfriends back in Chicago. They said, "No way, we don't believe you." Well, that 14-year-old boy insisted that he had these two white girlfriends, and finally the cousin and the friend said, "We dare you to talk to a white girl down here." That afternoon, they went into Bryant's grocery store, a tiny little convenience store in downtown Money, Mississippi, and as reported in the video series Eyes on the Prize, that 14-year-old boy walked up to a married woman behind the counter, 21-year-old white married woman, purchased a piece of gum, and very innocently but flirtatiously said, "Thanks, babe." Now, we hear that today. We don't think anything of it. It's no big deal. 1955 in Money, Mississippi, big deal. 2 nights later, that boy was taken at gunpoint from his uncle's home by the woman's husband and another man. They drove him outside Money, Mississippi, and savagely beat him to death. And finally, after disfiguring him beyond belief, they finished him with a shot to the head. And when the local sheriff found that boy's body, he could not believe the sight of what he was looking at. He put Emmett's body in a box, not even a coffin, a box, and shipped it back to Mamie Till, his mother. And when Mamie Till got the body in Chicago, the press gathered around her and they said, "What are you going to do?" She said, "We're going to have a funeral for my boy, and it's going to be an open casket funeral." The media went bonkers. "You can't do this. You'll upset people. You'll anger them." I know, but I want the whole world to see what they did to my boy. And that image of Emmett Till was published nationally in Jet magazine. And Rosa Parks cites that image as being the thing that gave her courage to stand when she was told to go to the back of the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Why do we show images like abortion? I don't want to beat people up. I show them because I'm convinced that if pro-life Christians don't lovingly but truthfully open the casket on abortion, our nation will continue to tolerate a Holocaust it never has to look at.
The same thing's true of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't believe the Holocaust until they saw the pictures.
Yeah.
Until they saw the images of what had happened to Jewish people.
That's right.
In Germany. A lot of Germans didn't believe that it was happening until they saw the photographic evidence.
That's right.
Of what had happened to people. So this offends us. But before we get offended at this idea, remember that when God showed us how serious our sin was, he did it with the brutality of the cross. And it happened in public.
Yep.
And when we talk about the cross, we're talking about a brutal event that took place where the Son of God hung and died and was brutally murdered on a cross. And it was done as a public display. And it's that God used to show us the picture and the image of how serious our sin is. So if you get offended by the idea of showing people images of abortion, the correction doesn't need to come with the people who are showing the images. You need to re-educate your conscience.
Of course, not everyone agrees with showing these pictures. Some people want to cover up this injustice. What exactly is their argument?
Martin Luther King
William Wilberforce, early Christian missionaries in the Congo and Africa, all used very graphic displays of injustice to convince the surrounding culture that wrong was being done. Is that any different with abortion?
I mean, it is a different time, and I mean, obviously I wasn't alive during all these time periods, so I don't know exactly what took place. I mean, it is like kind of shocking to see all these violent, graphic pictures of abortion and stuff, and it's gross, and it makes you think about it, but it also makes you, I mean, I avoid this area when I know that those boards are going to be up.
It may have been a different time, but the issue then is exactly the same as the issue today. Who counts as one of us? Wilberforce exposed a society that had set aside an entire class of human beings that could be killed and enslaved. When we show abortion pictures, we are exposing an injustice where an entire class of human beings in our day has been set aside to be killed because they get in the way of something we want. We should expose that as wrong. The young man also said he didn't like the pictures. Well, I don't like them either, but that doesn't mean they're not necessary. Just like showing pictures of slaves with their backs carved up by whips was not fun to look at, abortion pictures aren't fun either, but they convey truths that words alone could never convey and reawaken in people moral intuitions that words alone will never capture. Others worry about women who've had abortions. Will these pictures induce a guilt trip on them? I get that, but when we don't show these pictures, we're not sparing women guilt. We're sparing them healing because unconfessed sin is keeping them out of full fellowship with Christ. And finally, people worry that small children will see these pictures and be traumatized. I'm always curious about why these same people don't complain about supermarket tabloids that show gruesome images right there in the checkout line. Sure, we shouldn't deliberately target children with pictures, but are we more worried about the feelings of the born than we are the lives of the unborn? Did you see Schindler's List?
I've not seen that.
Passion of the Christ?
Yeah, but not in a long time.
Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
Pretty graphic stuff.
Yeah.
Did you feel there was value in that footage?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely, it makes it more real, I guess, but I mean, it is a movie, and you know that it isn't real. I mean, you know that it does happen, but you're not actually seeing someone get his leg blown off. Like, it's not straight footage from a war. So, like, I think that makes it a little bit easier to look at.
Forgive me for not being persuaded by people who say we shouldn't show gruesome images of aborted children, but they will go to a movie theater and pay to see far worse.